In this screencast, we'll design a function that takes a list of cars and determines how many of them are made by Honda. We'll start with the data definitions from previous screencasts. We have a data definition for a single car, and we have a data definition for a list of cars. Let's run this and then get started in our new cell. As always, we'll follow our How to Design Functions recipe. We need to start with the stub, including signature and purpose. We'll call this function How Many Hondas, and it needs to take a list of cars, and it's going to be counting. So it will return a number, and it's going to be a whole number, so we'll have it return an int. For the purpose, we'll write return the number of cars that are made by Honda. For the body of the stub, we'll return 0. Any integer would do. Let's move on to the examples. If I pass it an empty list, I would expect to get back the answer 0. In an empty list, there are no Hondas. If I pass it the list, which contains C1 and C2, if I scroll up, I can see that one of those cars is a Honda. So I expect to get back 1. Let's do an example for a non-empty list where we expect the answer to be 0. And then another example in which we expect everything in the list to be counted. I've completed my examples. Oops, except for a typo. I'll fix that before I run my cell. And I see I'm getting a name error for type check. I forgot to import everything from the CS103 module. I'll do that now and rerun. Oh, I have another error. I forgot to put accord in quotes, so it thinks it's a variable name, but I intended it to be a string. You can see that my tests are running. They're not passing, but that's what I expect because I haven't implemented my function yet. There are no syntax errors, which is what I want at this stage of the function design. Let's move on to the template. I'll comment out the body of my stub and copy the body of my template. Now, when I do that, I want to make a note about where the template was from, and I took it from list of car. I need to finish designing the body of this function. I know I want to return an integer, so I need to think about the type of my accumulator. In this case, it makes sense for the accumulator to count the number of Hondas we've seen so far. So it should start at 0. We haven't seen any Hondas yet. And its type is integer. I need to think about what code to write to handle each individual car. I can see that I'm moving through the list of cars, and I might want to update my accumulator. And what I have to work with is the car, which is wrapped with a call to fun4car, and the current value of the accumulator. That reference to car's template function is built into the template to remind me that it's very likely that I need a helper function here. I need to check if this car is a Honda, and if it is, I need to add 1 to the accumulator. If it's not, I don't need to add 1 to the accumulator. What I need here is a helper function that will return true if that car is a Honda. I'll write the car to the helper function that doesn't exist yet. At this point in time, I'm realizing that I need a helper function, but this helper function is not yet designed. I'll write a stub for the helper function so that I can finish my previous function design and then come back to the helper function. Going back to how many Hondas, this ... means I might need to do something here, and these are the pieces that I have to work with. In this case, I need to change the template body a little bit. So I'll write, if C is a Honda, the new value of the accumulator equals the old value of the accumulator plus 1. If it's not a Honda, I don't need to update the value of the accumulator, and we'll just let the loop move on to the next car. Once we've looped through all of the cars, what I need to return is the value that's stored in the accumulator. I don't need to make any further changes there. Now if I run the code, I'm still not expecting the test to pass because we have a stub for is Honda, but I expect my code to run without syntax errors. It does, so now I can go back to is Honda and finish the function design. We've already completed the stub, including signature and purpose, so the next step is the examples. Is Honda C1, I remember that is a Honda, and is Honda C2, I remember that that's not a Honda. I'll run that code to ensure that my examples have the right syntax, and they do. Now I'll go back and work on the rest of the function design. I need to copy the body of the template from car because my input is of type car. I'll comment out the body of the stub and make the note about where I took the template from, and I took it from car. Now, to finish the implementation, I need to check if c.make equals the string Honda. If it does, this is a Honda, and if it doesn't, it's not. Now if I run my code, I expect that all of my tests will pass because I've completed the function design for my helper function. We can see from this example that we started off to design one function called How Many Hondas, but in the middle of that implementation, we realized that the reference rule was reminding us that we may need a helper function. The How Many Hondas function's one task is to count the number of cars that are made by Honda. To figure out if an individual car is made by Honda is another task, and that's why the reference rule is guiding us to design another function for that task.